Everyone, that was a bit dramatic, wasn't it? What a dramatic thing to follow up on. No pressure. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Oscar Hoyle, and I am so excited to be kicking off our session, all centered around the experiences of LGBTQ plus young adults in the workplace. I have a really fantastic session where I'm going to be featuring some of my amazing team members and a brilliant panel towards the end of the session today as well. Um, there, you'll notice that we're on YouTube, which is very high tech, and you can throw your comments into the YouTube chat as we go along today, and we can see it from our stream. But likewise, there is a QR code on the screen, which you're welcome to scan if you don't fancy using your name or your YouTube account to leave a comment. So, my name is, as I say, Oscar Hoyle. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Blossom LGBT CIC. I use they them pronouns in conversation. So if you're referring to me in conversation, instead of using he or she, it's they, or him or her, it's they. And that's because I identify as non-binary. Before we get too far into the session today, it's really important to us to create a psychologically safe place, both for the people who are watching this session, but also those who are presenting and joining in. For example, we have a panel happening today, amongst a number of other exciting things. To do that, we are looking for people to respect all identities. That means that I totally understand, and we totally understand that if, for example, you may not understand an identity, you might be confused about it, that's completely fine. That's not what we're here to do. We are here to learn about the experiences of the young adults who Blossom LGBT supports. Likewise, people will be sharing their stories today, and we would really encourage you to take the learning from the stories that are being shared. But wherever possible, please try to leave individual stories and not appropriate people's stories as your own. Please also try to remain free from judgment and open-minded as we go through today's session as well. This is incredibly important because we're talking about experiences that a lot of people have shared with us for us to be able to develop this session. And it's really important that we make sure that we're open-minded and respect that actually we are talking about the lived experiences of people. And you're also really encouraged and welcome to leave questions, comments, considerations as we go through today's session. Even if you think a question might sound silly, it is totally fine to ask us those questions. We at Blossom LGBT do this for a living, so you cannot scare us. But that being said, that doesn't apply to all LGBTQ plus people. So please, whilst you're welcome to ask us questions, keep in mind that perhaps not everybody is as welcoming to questions as we are today. So I'm going to just quickly run through who Blossom LGBT is to give you an understanding of why we're doing this work, why we're the right people to be talking about this type of work before I hand over to my colleagues to talk a little more around, the key reasons that we're here today, which is the employability and upskilling focused work. So Blossom LGBT was founded in 2019, being run from the living rooms of inspired volunteers who wanted to change the way that LGBTQIA plus people connected. And we quickly discovered that there was a huge need for supportive spaces for LGBTQ plus young adults. And by 2021, we had registered as a community interest company and made a name for ourselves as a pretty progressive and forward-thinking community-led organization. At the time of writing, there's a passionate team of 20 volunteers. We also are now really lucky to have a fantastic paid employee team as well. And we've recently been labelled the largest LGBT nonprofit in the county of Surrey, or operating in the county of Surrey. I suppose that's debatable, but hey, I'm never going to argue with a fun label like that. Before working with us at Blossom, our members tell us that they felt confused and isolated and generally withdrawn from society. And we help by empowering them to blossom into beautiful, confident people, which allows our members to find true happiness and gives them the power to build sturdy careers, meaningful relationships, and pride in who they are. To do this, we have a really clear and defined purpose and vision. It's our purpose that we are going to support the amazing things that LGBTQIA plus people can achieve when they're empowered to succeed without the fear of discrimination. And it's our vision that by working together, and by together, I mean us as an organization, I mean the LGBTQ plus community, I mean the businesses that are watching today, the individuals that are watching today, all of us coming together to create environments where LGBTQIA plus young adults can succeed in all aspects of their personal and professional lives. Part of this, and to achieve this work, we're working to a strategy, which was that very dramatic video at the start of the session. But three key pillars from that strategy that I really hope stand out today when we are talking is our goal to incorporate social opportunities for the young adults that we work with, skills sharing opportunities for the young adults we work with, and the opportunity to express themselves authentically, all of which we consider vitally important to developing an individual holistically, professionally, and personally. Our newest scheme, which is why we are here today and what we're talking about, is focusing on addressing the inequalities and barriers for LGBTQ plus young adults who are trying to access work. And I just have to give a massive shout out to the National Lottery Community Fund who have made this work possible for us. Without their really generous support, there is no way that we would be doing this webinar today. There is no way that we would be doing our upcoming workshops for young adults, our mentoring, every aspect of the work that we're planning to do is currently made possible by the National Lottery Community Fund. So a massive thank you to them. But beyond who we are and what we do, there is a fundamental human impact on the work. And today, I want you to keep in mind the experiences of this person called Kai. And this is not his actual name or an actual picture of him, because that would be incredibly inappropriate. But Kai is an example of the type of people that we work with at Blossom LGBT and the type of people that we want to focus on creating. So this is Kai. He is a trans man who doesn't have many connections within the trans community. I think we were a little bit harsh here by saying no trans friends, but that's what he told us. And he lives in a relatively rural area in the county and experiences isolation and low moods quite often. What's an added interest for Kai is that he grew up during Section 28. So Section 28 was a piece of legislation in the UK that was only repealed in the early 2000s, which banned the promotion and often discussion of homosexuality or LGBTQ+ within the public sector. This means that Kai grew up with no LGBTQ+ role models. There was no inspiring, interesting, or exciting stories for Kai to learn about other LGBTQ+ people. And this all correlates that Kai currently works in a small coffee shop. It's not really his passion, but you have to pay for the newest chains or t-shirts, whatever it is that he's wearing. So when Kai started working with us, we took some clear steps. So he came to our wellbeing space and really showed a passion for his artwork, actually. And what Blossom does and kind of our key motivations is that we coached him to host workshops with us and to learn how to do different types of workshops, to build connections, to experience what it is like to host different events, to actually find ways to channel his art into his professional careers, and build his general confidence in doing so, which led to us being able to commission him to run workshops for us, and he used his commission to run a mini studio. All whilst receiving direct coaching, in fact, from myself at the time. And this outcome, and again, we're talking quite briefly here, but the outcome of this is that he went on to host more local workshops by himself, was noticed by large international brands, hosted workshops with them, received multiple corporate commissions, and was able to leave his job to become a full-time creative. Now, this isn't our doing completely. Of course it isn't. This individual is an incredibly powerful, strong, and talented person. But what we are trying to do with a lot of our work, and what we hope will spotlight today, is that we're trying to prove to young adults that when the barriers of discrimination, of fear of discrimination, of not working in inclusive environments are removed, that they can achieve so many amazing different things. Anyway, I have blabbled on for a while, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to one of my amazing colleagues. Jem is going to introduce himself in more detail. I'm so happy to have him as a relatively new member of our team. So please welcome Jem up to the stage.
Hey everyone, how are you doing today? Really excited to be here, really excited to be working with Blossom, and to tell you a little bit about employability and upskilling and why those two things are so important, not just for LGBTQ plus people, but in general for all people. And then we'll turn it over to my colleague Steph for a little bit more in-depth information. Just a bit about me. My background is in the performing arts and workshop facilitation, but it's really important to me to kind of use my experience to give back to the community, and I'm really excited to kind of be making this leap. So I'm just going to talk to you a bit today about employability and what it is. Employability, which is at the heart of our scheme, is basically defined as someone's ability to get hired, to stay employed, and the skills, knowledge, and personal attributes that you bring to work. And what makes it so important for all job seekers, regardless of the way that they identify, is a couple of things that I'm going to outline right now. First of all, a combination of soft and hard skills really set candidates apart from other candidates in the market. Hard skills are defined as kind of like anything that's a learned trade. So if I can fix a car, that's a hard skill. If I can build a table, that's a hard skill. But soft skills are super important. And if you live in a relatively isolated area, or you're not in education, it can be harder to develop those skills. And soft skills are people skills, anything that has to do with communication, interrelating. And in addition to any practical skills that you have, learning how to deal with others at work is absolutely essential for success. Employability skills also increase your chance of advancement at work. If you seem confident, competent, obviously you will stand out. Employability skills can also create more job security and more financial stability. And then crucially, especially for a lot of our service users, when you're in a secure position, you're actually able to set financial goals. So you can kind of ideally stop that cycle of living from paycheck to paycheck and actually begin to see like a more secure financial future for yourself, which is especially important for the demographic that we serve, given that so many LGBTQ plus youth experience homelessness. Most importantly, though, given our personal mission, is that employability skills can lead to increased happiness and satisfaction when your skills and interests are actually suited for your role. Like we saw in Oscar's example with Kai. We're looking to bring people to a more holistic sense of themselves and of working in a field that really works for them. This is also something that we're passionate about because it's really in line with a major shift in how young people are thinking about work. 64% of Gen Zs in the UK, France, Germany, and Ireland now consider it important to work for companies that are aligned with their personal values, which obviously represents a huge shift in the way people engage with work, again, as an extension of their values, their personhood, their identity. So people are living kind of more complete and less segmented lives, which is something that is important for everyone, but again, something that we really prioritize for our service users. Now I just want to talk a little bit about some reasons that learning employability skills, or getting employed rather, can be difficult, and how this economy, which is obviously not in great shape, is impacting people who are looking to break into the job market for the first time. First of all, it's just really crowded. Unemployment has risen 1.4 million, 1.46 million since July. And joblessness is up to 4.3% just in the last quarter from 3.8. And youth unemployment in particular has risen faster between spring and autumn 2020 than at any point since 2008. Obviously, that's attributable to the pandemic, but living in a post-pandemic world, it's unlikely that we'll be able to go back to the landscape the way it was before. So it is important to consider. Another thing that is really making it difficult for job seekers currently, especially job seekers that fall into the demographic that we serve, is the end of entry-level work. LinkedIn found that 35% of postings for entry-level positions actually require relevant work experience, and we'll take a little look in a minute at an activity designed to really illustrate that I hope you guys will participate in with me. But to get back to this, currently in software and IT right now, 60% of entry-level listings require 3 or more years of experience, which is just ridiculous for somebody looking for their first job. And the kind of final thing that I think is important to consider is how the rise of automation and AI are really putting an end to a lot of jobs that are traditionally referred to as low skilled jobs that you can get into maybe if you haven't been in education. Obviously, that's a term that I don't agree with, and I think is a massive oversimplification. But new tech is replacing these positions, most notably in the hospitality and retail sectors. For example, if you go into any fast food chain, there are now LED touch screens that will take on the role of a cashier. There's just less face-to-face interaction and fewer positions available in these kinds of sectors. Also importantly, many jobs now require new specialized skills. So many people may find that their skills and qualifications were once relevant for the positions that they were looking at, and now, despite having been educated or despite having trained, their skills and qualifications no longer meet employment criteria because it's changing so rapidly because of the rise of technology. So there are quite a few barriers at this moment that present issues for job seekers. And this is where the role of upskilling comes in. This is something that we really hope to help people with on our scheme. Oh, sorry. First, let's take a look at this activity. So I'd just like to invite you all to take a look at your screens right now. This is a real job description that I've found on Indeed. This person is, this company is looking to hire an entry-level trainee recruitment consultant. As you can see, the description, the role requires sourcing, screening, interviewing candidates, managing the recruitment cycle, prepping candidates for interviews. I'd just like you, if you guys care to engage, to pop some stuff in the chat. And I'd like you to, one, consider what you think the compensation might be for a role like this, and two, to just guesstimate what you think the requirements might be in terms of previous experience and things like that. I would love to hear what you have to say before I let you know. So feel free to drop them in there. I will take a minute. Also, if anyone cares to feedback on if they think that they might have been, what requirements they think they might have been able to measure up to when they were looking for their first job, that would also be great. I'll just join the live chat here. Oh, I'm having an error accessing the live chat. Give me one moment.
Here you go. I'll read them out for you to say if you're panicking. So the
you.
first comment, I won't read the names out, but the first comment was 30K. The second one was 25K.
Yeah, that's about right. Anyone have any other guesses before we reveal what the compensation is? And anyone have any guesses on what kind of qualifications this role might require? Lauren says, for my first job, all I could do was socialize. Haha, quite. And I apologize for reading the name out. That was an accident. Any other guesses for what qualifications might be required for this kind of role before I let you guys know? All right, we'll go for it. So the salary for this role is £23,000 per year. And the requirements are a degree with a 2.1 or above, previous sales experience in car sales, estate agency, door-to-door telesales, business to business, or business to consumer, a social and confident personality, money motivated, and goal oriented. So as you can see, for a role that does not offer significant compensation, there is an incredibly kind of stringent level of requirements. If I show you guys this next one, this I find particularly interesting. If I can get the next slide, this is for the role of a marketing intern with a large beauty brand. And yes, to answer your question, these are all real advertisements from Indeed.com, which is mind-blowing, really. This marketing intern position is something that I just came upon today, and I felt compelled to include. If you take a look at this list of incredibly weighty responsibilities here, they are substantial, and this is for, again, an internship position. Just have a little skim. I would love for you guys to guess the proposed salary for this role, and what level of previous experience you think might be necessary. Just shout it out in the chat. Oh, and if anyone feels compelled to include, how many of these responsibilities do you think you would have been equipped to manage at this stage in your career? I think that's a good question too. All right, so someone says if you call it an internship, you can give them 16K. Somebody says 20 to 23. Somebody says 18 to 20K. All right, let's see the next slide. This position is not compensated. This is a position that somebody would be expected to take on for free. The skills required are educated to a degree level, previous experience in a similar role, proficient in office, time management skills, and communication skills. So this I found just absolutely mind-blowing. And this is, again, a real advertisement that I stumbled upon just this morning. So it really, this is, I mean, in a very extreme case, but it really does drive home just how ridiculous the market is right now. We've got a comment that says, I would not have been able to manage after 5 years in the first job. So yeah, I mean, I agree. It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So yeah, so I think that those advertisements are really a great example of what people are genuinely dealing with right now. And it is shocking what the level of expectation is. So I guess we kind of want to get into what we hope to do about it. And upskilling is the answer. We want to help people expand their existing skill set through education and training. There's not much we can do to change the landscape, but we can do what we can to offer people a way to kind of wade through all of this adversity, because it's just wild. So what is upskilling? Expanding your existing skill set through education and training. As you can see from the success story of Oscar's nameless mentee in the beginning, when you offer people an opportunity to refine their skills in a supportive environment, really amazing things can happen. So upskilling is really the focus of our scheme. I think Oscar will speak a little bit more about how exactly we're going to help people with that at the end before the webinar. But now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Steph, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the specific challenges faced by our community in the job market. So I'll turn it over. Thank you guys so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steph, project manager at Blossom. I joined in October, actually. The project I'm managing is the Employability and Upskilling Initiative, which we are introducing to you right now. Just want to remind you that the QR code that you're seeing on the screen is for questions and feedback. If you don't want your name to appear on the YouTube chat, so it's confidential, kind of. When referring to me, I'd like you to use, please, the he, him pronouns, and if you happen to speak Arabic, address me as Inta. And I say this because I'm Lebanese. I'm born and raised in between the south of Lebanon, Beirut, and a town about 20 minutes north of Beirut. So Arabic is one of my languages, is one of the languages that I speak. Be happy to speak Arabic with anyone on there. A little about me. My focus has been up until now on gender and sexuality advocacy and political activism. I officially started joining grassroots organizations when I was 17. Trust me, that was a very long time ago, even though I look very young. The first organization I joined focused on abolishing laws and practices in Lebanon that criminalize same-sex relationships in Lebanon, obviously. And since then, I've been part of organizing in the Southwest Asian and North African region with Arabic-speaking activists such as myself, and also collaborating with activists from the Global South. Now, in Lebanon, maybe the region in general, same-sex partnerships, sex outside of marriage, transitioning, even atheism, they're very illegal. They're against social values. As a confessionalist state, that means something as well. People I grew up with had this misconception that the West was a haven of opportunities, human rights, queer people rights, health benefits, blah blah, etc. I've always I've kind of thought and I've really felt and kind of known that it wasn't true, and I couldn't believe it was true. I was thinking like our media lies to us all the time about the world, about the reality of things. And surely the Western media does the same. And believe you me, people, I was right. I've been to almost 20 countries for conferences, work, and I saw and experienced this discrimination and racism and multiple things that I will be speaking about. I experienced them personally, and I saw them, with my friends. I've been in the UK since February 2021. I got a master's degree in criminology. I stuck around for a bit, and I've been seeing things. I mean, almost every time someone finds out I'm Lebanese, I get this sympathy comment of how hard it must have been growing up in Lebanon as a person who's assigned female at birth, who's trans masculine, and who's queer, etc. And the first question I usually get is, did you have a cultural shock when you first came to the UK? I'm not gonna lie, I did, but not in the way that you might think, and definitely not in the way that people had thought at the time. My shock was to see that so many people had no idea how bad it is here in the UK as well for queer people and people of color and people with disability or disabilities. So I'm gonna tell you what I've discovered so far. Honestly, I'm really glad to have some queer white people on board, like, Oscar, finally agreeing with me, because otherwise, up until now, I've been gaslit and second guessed. So, all right, today I'm going to delve into the intricate landscape of employability. I'm going to specifically focus on queer job seekers or employees in the workforce. You know how we're often bombarded with these motivational catchphrases like urging us to toil relentlessly in our careers, work hard, improve yourself, persevere, the world is your oyster. And that one you see right there, nothing is impossible. The word itself is I'm possible. I mean, honestly, when I think about it, these mantras tout personal responsibility of if you work hard enough, you get ahead in life. In other words, this is saying it's all on you. I mean, if that were true, wouldn't the majority of the population actually be rich in the capitalist world we live in? People working 12 to 14 hours to bring coffee, bring your drinks, bring your food, drive your buses, conduct trains, clean the streets, teach children, and, well, more than that, etc. Think about that, 12 to 14 hours. If it's all on me, I would I did those jobs. I was poor as, I'm not gonna say the rest of the word. Reality complicates things a little bit further than that. There are numerous factors that affect employability And I'd say, contrary to popular belief, it really doesn't have much to do with how hard a person is working, but more to do with outer factors, so to speak. There has been personal experiences and stories, research by local and international queer organizations like Stonewall and ILGA, publications such as in the Harvard Business Review. They collectively reveal that queer individuals, especially queer people of color and trans individuals and women, encounter discrimination and violence in the workplace. 2017 McGregor Smith Review underscores that discrimination permeates every career stage. The quote is, "There is discrimination and bias at every stage of an individual's career, even before it begins." Now, some of these forms of discrimination, I'm going to name them, I'm going to talk about them. Please feel free to leave some in the comments just in case I forget to mention them. There's lack of inclusive hiring practices. By that, we're meaning that the job market often fails to adopt inclusive hiring practices that can help overcome systemic biases. This includes blind recruitment, diverse interview panels, and addressing unconscious bias in decision-making processes. Talking also about tokenism and stereotyping. This is where, you know how these employers tell you, we in the job ad, we value out of the box thinkers, but when you apply for it, you are very quick to be labeled as as a person from a marginalized group. You're very quick to be labeled as too radical or aggressive or angry when you speak out against injustices. So this really creates a double bind where marginalized individuals are expected to conform to certain stereotypes or risk being seen as undesirable hires because they make you uncomfortable when they talk about these things. In terms of racism and ableism and discrimination, this is where people of color and people with disabilities often face biases in hiring and promotions. This limits employability prospects usually. And this systemic discrimination can be particularly insidious as it hinders opportunities for individuals from marginalized backgrounds. There's also borders and citizenship status. And the politics of employability, they can get further complicated by immigration policies and citizenship status. Many immigrants and refugees face barriers in accessing job opportunities due to restrictive immigration laws. And you know what, even individuals with legal status may be subjected to discrimination or exclusion based on their nationality and or ethnicity and or how long they're going to be staying in the country. So how long is your visa valid for? Oh, a year? No, we need someone for 3 years. I mean, it is illegal, but there's no way to prove that this is happening sometimes. Is also underinvestment in education. Here we're talking about how some communities, particularly communities in underprivileged areas, may lack access to quality education and skill development opportunities. And this education inequality can severely limit employability prospects and reinforce cycles of poverty. And when it comes to wage gaps, marginalized groups have reported often experiencing wage gaps, and they may be more likely to work in low paying or precarious jobs. This exploitation further perpetuates economic inequality and limit employability prospects. So here I was talking about barriers to employment that marginalized people face in general. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about specific queer-focused challenges. I don't have a slide for this. Sorry, I forgot. I'm going to highlight some key challenges. Again, please feel free to leave some in the comments if I forget to mention some, or if you just want to leave a comment or a feedback. In terms of discrimination and bias based on sexual preferences or gender identity and presentation, this can manifest as hiring bias, limited career advancement opportunities, unequal treatment compared to heterosexual and cisgender colleagues. And also we're talking about tokenism, which I mentioned earlier. There is lack of legal protection. In some regions, There may be limited legal protection against workplace discrimination that is based on gender and sexuality. And this lack of legal safeguards can leave queer individuals vulnerable to unfair treatment. And you know what? Even when there are legal protection mechanisms set in place, queer people are often gaslit when they speak about gender and sexuality based discrimination or any other issues that intersect with their identities. We're also talking about lack of inclusive policies. Well, this is when companies may lack inclusive policies and benefits that specifically address the needs of queer employees, such as transgender inclusive healthcare or domestic partnership benefits. Um, Closeting and mental health. This means that where some queer individuals feel pressured into hiding their sexual orientation or gender identity at work due to fear of discrimination. This closeting can lead to mental health issues sometimes, including anxiety and depression. This can impact job performance and job satisfaction. Microaggression and stereotyping. When we say microaggressions, we're talking about insensitive comments or jokes, and these can create a hostile work environment for queer employees. Additionally, subjecting queer employees to harmful stereotypes and assumptions about their abilities or behavior because of our preconceived notions. This could be manifested sometimes with examples like, oh, lighten up, why can't you take a joke? And just other forms of gaslighting a person. Other barriers, we're talking about isolation and lack of support. This is where queer individuals may feel isolated in the workplace because they lack visible representation and support networks. And the absence of LGBTIQ plus employee resource groups or allies can contribute to this isolation. Barriers to career advancement. This is where queer employees may encounter. This is something that queer employees may encounter in their at the workplace, and they may be overlooked for promotions or leadership roles due to bias and discrimination. This limits long-term earning potential and career growth, and also affects, job satisfaction and performance. Lastly, intersectionality. These identity issues, these barriers, these issues that we feel, they don't exist in a vacuum. There's the challenges that queer individuals feel they're often compounded by other forms of identity, such as, my race, my disability or disabilities, my socioeconomic status, and other. And intersectionality can create unique employment challenges that require a multifaceted approach to address effectively. So, like for example, sometimes in a workplace, when you say that you might say, "Oh, it's not a very diverse workplace," and your manager would say, "Why? What do you mean? I'm part of the LGBT community," and you're like, "Yeah, but I'm the only person of color. I'm the only immigrant here. I'm the only person with a disability, and there's no mechanism set in place to address my issues as well." So, in summary, what I'm saying is that employability is profoundly influenced by systemic factors beyond an individual's control. It intersects with broader issues like systemic racism, immigration policies, discrimination, your social media posts, anything you can think of. And to tackle these challenges, we must implement inclusive policies and support legal protection against discrimination. So, what's our role in this, and why should we care? From a humanitarian point of view, we should care because, simple, plain and simple, no one should face discrimination or violence. This is, I guess, like a duh thing. But also from an economic standpoint, did you know that the UK's economy to gain an estimated 24 billion pounds if Black, Asian, and minority ethnic employees received equal career opportunities. Just think about that for a minute. Discrimination is expensive, right? I mean, just hire more BAME people. Just like it's more complicated than. But yeah, this is also from the McGregor Smith review that I'm getting. I'm gonna leave it at these two reasons: the humanitarian reason, and honestly, I think I've given more than 24 billion reasons to be proactive about diversity, equity, and inclusion. In terms of how to do it, Oscar will speak to that in a minute. But before then, I also have a little exercise for you, to think about, to jot your thoughts a little bit. But I'm going to do this a little bit differently from what we used to. I personally hate it when I'm attending a panel and as soon as the speaker is done, they're done talking, we're asked to have questions and comments, and I haven't even processed what was said, so I usually find myself not having anything to say. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to present you with the scenario and the discussion questions. I'd like you to write these questions down, or I don't know, take a photo of it or whatever. Have a think about them and leave your answers or comments in the comment section on the YouTube chat, or scan the QR code, and if you want to send them confidentially, if you don't want your name to appear on the YouTube chat. I'm going to read it out for you. The scenario is called the promotion predicament. So we're going to imagine a mid-sized marketing company with a diverse workforce, okay? So in this scenario, we've got our main character who is called Alex. Alex is a highly talented marketing professional who identifies as non-binary. So Alex uses the they, them pronouns. Alex has been at this job for 5 years, okay? And they've constantly delivered exceptional results. They have received positive performance reviews. They have demonstrated strong leadership skills. In short, Alex is a wonderful employee. So at the moment, the company is promoting employees to the next level. Alex is an obvious candidate, for this senior marketing role. However, Alex is hesitant to apply to the role due to a perceived lack of support for queer employees at the company. Alex feels that they might face bias and discrimination if they come out at work, which might affect their chances of promotion. So my discussion points are, again, take a few minutes, write them down, leave your comments throughout the rest of the panel or whenever you feel like it, and we will address them at the end of the session or as they're coming along. So are Alex's concerns legitimate, or is Alex just exaggerating, being paranoid, and or overreacting? What are the potential challenges that Alex might face in the workplace related to their gender identity? How can this company create a more inclusive and supportive environment for queer people, for queer employees like Alex, or queer and non-binary? What advice would you give to Alex in this situation? And what policies and practices can the company implement to promote diversity and inclusion? As I said, Oscar is going to speak about how to do all of this later on, and Oscar will kind of answer these questions, but I would like you to think about it yourself. Maybe for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I don't know how long we have, Oscar, before the panel starts, but maybe if you want to take a little break, have a cup of tea or a snack or whatever you feel like it. And we'll be looking at the comment sections as they come through. Thank you for listening. Oscar, you're muted.
Do you know, you just had to. I just couldn't do a webinar without keeping myself on mute. We'll give everyone about 5 minutes to think those through, and feel free to chuck them in the chat if you want to. By all means, over that 5 minutes, if you wanted to have a quick refreshment break, that is absolutely completely fine. So we will be back in 5 minutes, where we're going to start talking a little more about the solutions to what we have spoken about so far today.
Yeah, sure. I've been asked to read the last question again. What policies and practices can the company implement to promote diversity and inclusion?
Love the running out of characters there. Someone's just got in touch to say they're having trouble using the chat. If you can't use the chat, the QR code on the screen, you are able to use that to get in touch with us. Or likewise, you can email employability@blossom.lgbt as well, all of which come straight to us, and we're keeping refreshing as we go. This is just a note for anyone who maybe popped to grab a cup of tea or something during that 5 minutes, that we will be back in 2 minutes. I always find these uncomfortable silences to be very painful, and I have this urge to just fill the gaps. And I even installed hold music to our streaming software so that we could fill the gaps, but I have the realization that YouTube doesn't like you using music. Okay, that was our 5 minutes. And I can see the number of viewers popping back up. So hello. I'm going to hand back to Steph just for him to run through the last few of the comments.
All right, I was just reading some of the responses. Okay. All right. Yeah. So yeah, someone said thank you for that session. So I felt seen when you said about being seen as too radical. Yeah, sorry about the characters. We have a limited number on the chat, but yeah, thank you for those who have been emailing and popping their answers on the QR code. If Alex feels this way, it is probably true, but maybe driven by unconscious bias and fear of the unknown rather than outright prejudice. The company should be looking at creating networks for, again, sorry for the limited number of characters. Yes, that is right. If Alex feels this way, it is legitimate, very legitimate. Even their fear of, their fear of the unknown is also legitimate, probably, and it is usually due to 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 our to people's experience at the workplace and usually how we experience things not just in the workforce but everywhere else. If I already feel that as a queer trans person or as a non-binary person or as whatever identity however I identify, and usually my experience is that the world is violent against me, then I would say it's when I go somewhere I would want them to automatically just come and tell me, you know what, where show me, not just tell me that this is an inclusive workplace environment, and approach me with this kind of support rather than me trying to question. Because if I'm afraid, then this is a very legitimate fear if I come from a violent background, for example. The company should be looking at creating networks for different groups and running awareness sessions to make people aware of their biases and encourage a more curious and interested frame of mind to ask more about the LGBTQ plus community and their needs. Yes, thank you very much. That is another comment. Is could Alex approach HR in confidence, or better still have a chat with their line manager, who must be impressed by their brilliant work and maybe offer to be an ambassador for LGBTIQ sharing a network? LGBTIQ plus colleague networks policies would support queer colleagues, gender neutral. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this word. Maybe Oscar could pronounce it for me. Training for managers and colleagues. They probably are legitimate. They felt that the company could introduce some LGBTIQ focused training to all employees, also introducing transitioning at work policies, gender neutral family policies, LGBTIQ inclusive discrimination policies, etc. Oh, facilities. Okay. Thank you. So gender neutral facilities, training for managers and colleagues. This is wonderful advice. I could read more responses for you if we have time, Oscar.
I'm afraid not. We are
Great.
there or thereabouts. I just will run through the last few of the slides before we get onto our really exciting panel, and I can see some lovely faces popping up in the chat as we talk now. So I'm very excited for that. But thank you, Steph, and also thank you, Jem, as well. You've both added such a really interesting input to the session today. So we need to take action together, and we need to take action in a way that is intersectional and inclusive. Acknowledging that we are working within a broken system is one thing, fixing the system is a whole other thing, and empowering people to work within said system is a third thing. And we have to do all of those to be able to work within the current system that we're in. And the thing is that discrimination is both systemic and individualist, and we will never be able to address one without addressing all to create outcomes. The reason all of this and everything we've spoken about today is so important for LGBTQIA plus people and generally for diverse people is that only 58% of LGBTQIA plus young adults have felt safe at school on a daily basis. That's compared to 73% of non-LGBTQIA plus pupils. Blossom's mission, our mission, is to create a way to bridge the gap. LGBTQIA young people, if they don't feel safe in school, they will drop out. That's very, very clear. Whether that's an actual dropout or whether that is doing what I used to do in school, which is going to smoke cigarettes in the bathroom, it's going to vary for every individual. But what's important is that we understand that there is an issue here, and that school at the moment is the primary way that our young people secure themselves work. We look back at the activity that we did with Jem, and he makes it very clear that even for those unpaid internships, we're still looking for degrees. So it's incredibly important for us to address these inequalities together. And how are we going to do that? Well, Blossom is breaking that up into 4 different approaches in our scheme. Some that you can be involved in, some that our young adults can be involved with, and some that anyone can be involved with. We're going to be offering one-to-one mentoring. This will be offered to anyone from the ages of 16 to 30. It doesn't matter where they are within their career. They could be currently in college, in university, they could be not in any form of education, training, or employment. Or they could be in a job. They want to increase their ability to gain a promotion or to find new work. So our mentoring scheme is going to be at the heart of everything that we do by working one-on-one holistically with our young people. What this does is it allows us to take that intersectional approach to addressing these gaps in employment by focusing on an individual, not just the LGBTQ+ community. We're going to be working on employability by throwing monthly workshops. All of these workshops will focus on giving LGBTQIA+ the skills that we know that our employers are looking for. These skills will be things like public speaking. There'll be things like writing CVs, interview skills. We'll also be looking at building skill within the community too, from taster classes in different sectors through to things like actually finding out what it is like to work in an office. These will also all be offered. And we'll be working with the employers too. When a young adult is placed into a workplace, we could do everything imaginable to make them feel included, but they will only be included if the employer is ready to have them, which is why we think that a fundamental part of our work is to work with employers to increase their inclusive processes too. For you, for everyone watching who's in a workplace, your key here is to focus on culture. Gen Zs are twice as likely to identify as LGBTQIA+, and they care about the cultures that they are stepping into. Even if you have inclusive policies, even if you don't have a bullying and harassment or a microaggression problem, you still need to have that culture. A policy for a lot of our young people isn't enough. And you have to be ready to adopt a culture that encourages learning and growth to be able to empower these young people. Similarly, as an employer, the ways that you can be involved is you can offer mentoring to your staff. If your staff want to be involved with us as a mentor, perhaps you are part of an LGBT network, we would love to have LGBT professionals join us. Likewise, you could become a partner to this scheme. We are looking to actively engage more businesses to spotlight inclusive workplaces to help them find talent that we know will go in and not feel discriminated against. And thirdly, do not forget age. I know there are some D&I professionals here today, and something that is often forgot about in diversity and inclusion strategies in anti-discrimination work is that age section. Obviously, our focus is on young adults, but also there needs to be a focus on older people too. And it's incredibly important that we have systemic policies and processes set up that do not discriminate against age. And as an individual, use our services. If you are a young adult watching us today, if you are somebody who isn't quite comfortable with where they are in their career at the moment, then we are here for you. All of our work with LGBT young adults is 100% free. You will never have to pay a penny for our services for you. So please do get involved. We likewise have very, very high targets that we're keen to meet. Anyone can share their story as well. Use the hashtag Blossom at Work and tag us, regardless of where you share it. Talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the experiences in your career that have shaped you and have shaped how you've experienced your career. Because the only way we can create a systemic change is by highlighting the problem. And finally, ask your employer as well. If you can be involved in the scheme, if your employer wants to offer this scheme or a similar one in-house, if your employer can make the changes. There are so many things that you could ask your employer to get involved with. And it's really important that as an individual, you use your platform to speak with your employers. So we're going to move on to the part that I am most excited about, which is our panel. The panelists, you can't see them, but I can, so I'm feeling quite lucky. Could you just give me a wave or a nod if you are good to start? Fab. Okay, good. Let me just remove this. That's very big and scary. I am so excited to have such a fantastic panel join us for this last part of the session. We have really brought a collection of amazing people in for this, from such a different range of experiences in different organizations as well. I'm just waffling on because my tech has frozen, and as soon as it unfreezes, I will start to introduce them to you. I have had the pleasure to meet all of these individuals on different occasions, and one person who I met very recently, actually, we did a panel together in the summer. And when she agreed to be part of this, I was so excited because she brings such an interesting perspective. So I'm going to bring Asha up on the screen to start with. Nothing like putting you on the spot. Hello.
Hi, Oscar. Thank you so much for having me. It's my absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Asha. It's really nice for you to take the time out. You know, you're doing this, and actually all of our panelists are doing this for free, and it just means so much to us that you're willing to support our mission. Before we get too into the conversations, we have some really interesting questions, I know, but would you just want to introduce yourself to the viewers?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Asha Harkness. My pronouns are she, her. I am the founder of Indigo Inclusion. So we are a anti-racist, diversity, equity and inclusion consultancy. We look through everything through an intersectional lens. I myself am a very intersectional individual. I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of different consultants who are the same from many different intersecting backgrounds and experiences. And really what we look to do at Indigo Inclusion is to build an inclusive environment sustainably, not tokenistically. And we are looking to ensure that everybody in the organisation that we're working with comes along on the journey so that they can ensure everyone has the opportunity to thrive and do their best, and therefore the business will thrive and grow as a result of that. And yeah, the aim of the game is to engage everyone, educate everyone, and empower them, because we know there's a lot of fear that can hold people back from, DE&I is such a big topic. So that's the name of the game, really. We want to bring everyone along on the journey, and we want to empower everyone to feel like they can make a difference.
Amazing, thank you, and I'm so happy to have you here again. I'll be coming back to you in just a few moments with the first question, but just to continue introducing our panelists, I am really also excited to have a representative of I don't know if we go with the UK's, Europe's largest or the world's largest LGBTQ plus charity. I was catching up with this person very recently, and they just bring me so much joy. So Kim, hello.
Hi, you're right.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Good, nice to meet everyone and be
Nice to
involved.
meet you. Thank you so much for coming. So, Kim, there might be people here who maybe don't know you, don't know Stonewall. So it would be great for you to introduce Stonewall, and also if you're comfortable talking a bit about yourself, who you are, but no pressure on the personal stuff.
Sure. So I'm Kim, pronouns are she, they, and I'm currently a client account manager at Stonewall. So as Oscar said, Stonewall is the UK's largest LGBTQ plus charity. And over the years, we have worked on a range of different advocacy programs and initiatives. So example, we mentioned Section 28 earlier on in the stream, and Stonewall was quite integral in pushing that legislation change forward. At the moment, our strategy is free to be. So we believe that everyone who is gay, lesbian, bi, trans, queer, questioning ACE, all the alphabet, should be free to be themselves in the world, whether that includes the workplace we're discussing now or any other avenue, really. So my role is based in the employment sector with different organisations. So my role is to work with different organisations on good practice when it comes to LGBTQ plus inclusion. That can take many different forms, policies and procedures, the employee life cycle, data capturing. So anything the organisation really needs to create a really inclusive environment and culture. And interestingly, I actually come from a civil servant's governance background. So working for the charity sector is really different and really interesting. So I'm really proud and pleased to be here as well. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. As a former Stonewaller myself, I have such a soft spot for the charity, and I'm glad that they have some amazing people like you in the DC team. So thank you. Now, my last panelist is very surreal to me because I'm going to totally embarrass them here, but I was their youth worker for quite a while, and they've gone on to do some of the most amazing things, and I think speak so well to actually what happens when queer people, just outed you, sorry, are empowered to succeed. So Gabriel, hello.
There you go. Now you can hear me. Hello. Sorry.
Hi.
I'm new to this. Hi. How are you?
I mean, the self promo is absolutely amazing with that background. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw it over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. No. Thank you. So I'm Gabriel. I'm the founder of Bunny Teeth. It was a company, if you will, that is now kind of a little production company. It used to be just me. And I've expanded recently, and I'm super, super lucky to have some amazing people working alongside me. The focus is specifically in the film industry, so kind of different. It was amazing hearing the other panelists talk about something because I don't know much about it, and I'm excited to learn. But we essentially work in the film sector, trying to make sure that sets are consent forward, needs first, queer, trans, neurodiverse, disabled, accessible, essentially. I myself, and once again, I'm jumping on what other people said, I'm an intersectional person. And for me, the film industry is not accessible to people like me, and that's what I'm trying to do. And as you can see, I've got a little this side. Fold is the film that I'm currently trying to make, and it is a trans story by trans storytellers. I'm currently actively hiring an all-trans cast and crew with a focus on empowering people who are neurodiverse, disabled, working class, and otherwise from marginalized backgrounds. Yeah, that's what I do in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to see if pressing the right buttons means that I can bring everybody up. It does indeed. And we'll hide that banner just so that Ashley, you're not covered by a QR code there. I'm going to politely ask the panelists, I'm actually going to mute you all myself. So just use a little bit of power there. But I will unmute you. But I want to first speak to you, Asha, around your experience, I suppose. What are the key challenges faced by LGBTQIA plus individuals in their careers? And how do you think being in the earlier stages of your career impacts that?
Yeah, well, I know we've covered a lot of different stuff already in the workshop today, so I won't go over that too much. But as you can expect, the LGBTQIA plus community is very expansive. There's intersections within that. there's different barriers that different people with different identities within that community will face. On a whole, I think, just to run through some of them, when they're early on in their career, getting into the workplace at any stage, psychological safety is going to be a really massive one, not only because of, I suppose, the potential discrimination that they might face, but the fact that the earlier you are on in your career, the less power and influence you have perceived within the organization in terms of the hierarchy. And that's something that I know myself and probably a lot of people on this call may have experienced. So along with not feeling that they have safety to speak up and challenge things that might not be right within the organization, that can compound other problems, such as the kind of excessive microaggressions that they might face, the added stereotypes, if they are out in the workplace, that they might face. And I know we've already talked about this, that might hinder their career progression. But also within the community themselves, as we've been talking about, and as I mentioned for Indigo Inclusion, intersectionality is a massive part of what we talk about. You know, if we're coming from a lower socioeconomic background, as we've mentioned, internships, you know, not everybody has the ability to work for free and travel to a place, or even online, because they might be out having to get another job that will help pay the bills, to be able to even get experience in corporate environments or other environments. So when they do come into the very first job, that can be a real culture shock and something else to have to get used to, along with everything else that's going on in their mind, along with, do I have to mask? Am I safe here? Is somebody going to ask me about my weekend? And I have to, you know, added emotional tax of thinking I need to hide my true self because I'm not safe. And as I don't think we've touched on, but they, within the community, compared to our heterosexual counterparts, there is a high percentage of sexual harassment within the workplace. We know that there's a lack of visible role models in general because not everybody is out. So we don't know, you know, it's the old adage, you can't be what you can't see. And if you're coming into the workplace for the first time and thinking, can I progress here? Am I safe here? Having a visible and active and vocal role model within the organisation and other people that also support them is really important, to just establish that baseline that helps them to feel, okay, I can just get on with my job here. And, you know, so there's so many things, as we've been talking about and as you would expect, that can be in play before we even talk about starting work. And something else that I wanted to mention is if we had like a Venn diagram of the LGBTQIA plus community and neurodiversity, there is a massive crossover. So we're focusing on Gen Z today. Incidentally, in the next 5 years, they're going to be making up to 60% of the workforce. So absolutely never been a better time to have this conversation and to think about those inclusion steps. But within the autistic community, we have 8 times more likely, people that are autistic are 8 times more likely to identify as non-heterosexual, especially asexual and bisexual. And those with ADHD are more likely to be gender diverse and without outside the binary as well. So when we're thinking about the community, we also need to be thinking about our working practices, and are they set up for neurodiverse minds, because there's a massive crossover there. And yeah, I could go on, so I think for now, sorry.
No, absolutely. I think you've hit on some super important aspects there, and some, I mean, particularly something that I very much relate to is that piece around neurodiversity and LGBT. In fact, 75% of our service users fall roughly within both communities. So it's a really, really large thing. And I'm going to throw a totally unscripted question to you. And if you want to phone a friend, I reckon Kim could do a good job at answering this. So no pressure, because I know that sometimes the last thing you want is to get an unscripted question. But you talk about role models here. And a lot of businesses often say, you know, we want to role model people, but we don't necessarily have the role models in place at the moment. What could they be doing in the meantime?
In the meantime of so my brain's going two different ways. So potentially they could do things to encourage people within the organizations to feel comfortable to come out and be those visible role models. But if they don't have that, then also my brain's going the other direction, that there are plenty of role models within different industries which they could have as part of their inclusion program to bring in, give talks and workshops, be a part of these external mentoring schemes like yours, because I myself, every organisation I've been a part of throughout my earlier education years as well, I've been one of the only brown people or person of colour, brown woman in the space, in the organisation consistently, which is a bit of a shame because that's not always the case. But in my respective industries as well, I've never had that role model. So I've literally gone onto LinkedIn and found people that I see that are neurodivergent, that are South Asian, that are bisexual, that come from a working class background, all these different aspects. I'm following them, I'm engaging with them, I'm having conversations with them, just purely for the need of, I need to connect with people like me. So if we can take that labor away from the people and bring it up front into the organization and show them these are all the different kinds of leaders that are out there and people you can be, that would be a great thing, I think.
Thank you. And I am so sorry for throwing that at you, but you literally gave the exact answer that I was hoping you would give. So I feel a bit less bad now. I'm going to go over to Gabriel for a question now. So you are, I would say, relatively towards the earlier part of your career. I don't think that's... Would you agree? Would you disagree? You're welcome to disagree here.
No, I agree. I agree completely. You're fine. Continue.
So, as somebody who's recently started within your career and you've done those sort of jobs that I suppose you would see somebody in the early parts of their careers doing, what has your experience been? And I suppose, how much do you think your identity has shaped the direction that you're taking your career or going in your career within?
Sure. So for me, I always say that the projects that I'm doing at the moment, and the same goes for the casting crew that I have, is that I'm kind of trying to pave way in an industry that is inaccessible to us. I have spent so much of my time being like, because I'm at university at the moment, and I ask my lecturers, I say, how do I get into the industry? And they say, oh, become a runner. And it's essentially just a PA. You just run around getting people coffees for anyone who isn't accessible. That term is inaccessible. And the joke that I always say, as somebody who is an ambulant wheelchair user, is, how can I be a runner if I can't walk well? And I think that it really reflects on how inaccessible these entry-level jobs are to people who are disabled. And not only that, but if you are marginalized in any shape or form or identify with that terminology, going into something like being a runner, where you are, once again, these are quotes used by the industry, not mine, at the bottom of the food chain, is another form of, for me, systemic oppression that feels not good, for lack of a better term. And for me, I have been doing roles like amateur intimacy coordination, because that's something I have training in, which is a more trauma-informed approach that is also inclusive. But other job roles have absolutely no consideration for any kind of marginalization. And I have had experiences where I've sent my CV off to a place and said, hey, I'm great at this, I've been doing this for ages. And because my portfolio is so quote unquote aggressively queer, apparently, this is feedback that I've received, it means that if I'm not trying to work on a set that is specifically for a type of media that is queer, trans, disabled, and neurodiverse, my identity is seen as something that is potentially too much, which is, once again, not my quote. I don't believe in that. It goes against everything I believe in. So it's essentially trying to wade through these inaccessible jobs that are, you know, tokened as entry level, when in reality they are inaccessible.
And I think it is so shocking that, you know, people give feedback like a CV being too queer or something like that. But I think it's actually a reflection sometimes on what people think is helpful, which is that going back in the closet. And you know, we know that 60% of graduates do go back in the closet when they're going to work for the first time. So those numbers are really, really high. So thank you for highlighting that point particularly. And I'm going to slightly shift the conversation, but keep it on that same track. So you talk about employment and you know, looking for those internships or early stage jobs, or as you said, on the bottom of the ladder. So I suppose whilst Blossom focuses on LGBTQ plus employability, we also need to focus on intersectionality as well. And something that I know that Stonewall provides a relatively large amount of guidance on is around recruitment, right? So Kim, I suppose this question is for you, which is, how do you feel is the best way to approach, I'm going to say early stage recruitment, but I suppose recruitment more generally, in ensuring that we actively address underrepresentation?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, because when you talk about intersectionality and underrepresentation, I think the most important thing is to actually dig down into those terms, because each organisation is going to be different and each sector is going to be different as well. And therefore, the kind of dynamics of the pyramid of hierarchy of privilege are obviously going to be different from one sector to another. So what might work for some organisations won't necessarily work for others. For example, the airline industry is quite a difficult industry to, especially for employability of LGBTQ plus people, because there's the consideration of safety with global travel, and how does that work if you want a non-binary passport, and all these other considerations that come under that as well. So it really differs between sectors, and also in terms of intersectionality, race might not be, I pick race because clearly I am of a minority race, but that might not be actually what is underrepresented in a particular sector. So what we would recommend to our clients and our organizations is actually data is one of the most important things when it comes to tackling intersectionality, because if you've got the right data categories right, it really helps build that culture in the organization that you're trying to get the information from your employers about what information about the diversity of the workforce. And once you have that information, then you can actually use that to see where and specifically the underrepresentation is occurring. So for example, if you do find that you're having a lot of people that aren't from a working class background, there's ways to kind of interrupt that. We recommend doing things like specifically targeting colleges and the early further education. You can do that through recruitment events or specific leafleting, or even having a specific partnership with a college at that level. There's also you can run employer events as well and promote those on social media. Obviously, we know how popular social media is with Gen Z, which I'm not part of, despite my obviously youthful appearance. So it's looking at those type of things and actually thinking about where does the underrepresentation occur within our organisation and then the sector. And we also encourage organisations to engage in external engagement as well. So if there's any kind of local charities, obviously such as yours, or anything like that within the local area or within the sector, we would encourage organisations to reach out to those charities and those particular organisations to be able to work in partnership and take that bit further.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. And I think actually a reflection on different industries is so important. And I think as all individuals, I suppose, working within D&I or inclusion in any scope, it's really important that we make sure that, and we remind ourselves that there isn't that one size fits all approach to inclusion. So I'm going to come back to Asha quickly. So we're talking here recruitment, right? And something that is really important to consider is that getting young people into a post is one thing, right? So we can take those steps to make them feel included enough to get them into work. Sure, fine. But inclusion really shouldn't end there, right? So I suppose how can we help to really integrate diverse young adults into workplace cultures?
Yes, definitely. So I'm going to flip this question a little bit, because really we want to create the workplace culture that can easily allow us to integrate with these LGBTQIA plus people coming into the workplace. And that, as I've mentioned, as far as I'm concerned, is a long-term sustainable thing. So yes, it's absolutely brilliant to celebrate Pride Month, different awareness days, LGBTQIA History Month. But if we're doing that in isolation, it's tokenistic, and we're not doing the real work to create a culture of inclusion that, you know, really means that people coming into the workplace can just easily get in and kind of get on and focus on their work. So often this needs to start with preparing ourselves for a bit of a mindset shift. We have got a lot of people, as you would expect, in leadership that are from different generations. I know it's already been mentioned on this call, on the workshop earlier, that the Gen Z talent pool is they're focusing on sustainability. They're focusing on social justice. They want to work somewhere where they feel aligned to the cause. They are more genderqueer and sexually diverse in terms of not heteronormative than any other generation we've seen before. They come with technology first, as we all know. So there's a lot of different things, again, that we need to think about when we're thinking about how can we enable the talent to really thrive as soon as they get into the workplace. So again, engaging people on all levels of the business, but definitely leading from the top. Having base levels, I think, is really important. So the DEI policy, yes, that does not create a culture, but a lot of businesses don't have one. And if we're thinking about the UK Equality Act, which seeks to protect people within the community, we need that to be able to say to all of our employees, this is our policy. And if you are exhibiting behaviours outside of that, such as microaggressions and etc., then that's going to be a problem because it's not in line with our policy. So that's a base level for me. And I would advise all organisations to find out, kind of as Kim alluded to, what's really going on for your organisation. What are the disparities there? What are people feeling? And just seek to have a simple strategy over a number of months and years. That means you are creating change towards that. Seeing young people as talent. I know this is a really simple one, but, you know, it's not just, you know, these other people over here. Like we all just want to do a good job, essentially. And people from the LGBTQI community, like we've been discussing, they are from a variety of different backgrounds and intersex. They bring so much innovation and creativity if you allow for it. So, you know, don't see it as we have to do this, but actually something that you should be looking forward to doing. Some kind of actionable bits to build on all of that is we talked about kind of having vocal and visible mentors or leaders within the business. I think that's really important. If we don't have that active allyship from as many people as possible, so it is uncomfortable, but we have to know where to recognize homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, acephobia, etc., and call it out when we see it. And I would always advise to do that in an unemotional, de-escalated way, as I like to say, calling people in outside of the situation, letting people know something's happened and this isn't okay, but this is how we move forward and this is what we would like to see instead, so we can all learn from it and move forwards. Showing up in small, consistent ways as an active ally and making sure that these younger or newer people to the organisation know that they have someone that they could go to who may not necessarily belong in the community themselves, but they know that if they had a problem or an issue or a concern, that is a safe person that they can go to and share those concerns with, be it related to their sexuality or gender identity or not. I've made notes, so yeah. So this is an important one. So the important one that I kind of want to leave you with is just to really ask the individuals what support that they might need. And sometimes they don't know. So sometimes we have to offer suggestions. And that's where we have to do a little bit of research and a little bit of learning to put those suggestions forward, to give them ideas of what is possible, because they might just think, oh, well, I could suggest this, but there'll be no budget for that. They're not going to do that. It's completely out of the box. So if you suggest some options, that can get them thinking, but it's down to those unique individuals to be able to express what support they might need as well. And really listen to what they say, please. Because the worst thing is to ask and then to ignore. And I think all of these things, are going to help them to not only see, if they're seeing these kinds of things, they'll see, okay, this is a place that is working towards being truly inclusive, not tokenistic, and it help them to just integrate into the role in the company much more quickly. But it also is going to enable them to thrive long term.
So spot on there. And I think the point around flipping the question was so valid and so important, actually, because it isn't about young adults changing themselves to fit into these cultures, is it? It's about workplace that's recognizing, as you say, that these are important talent and they should be seen as something that's actually really valuable to an organization, rather than just a tick box almost, or something that they'll get to when they run out of the people in the generation of 30 years and above. So I think those are really, really key points there. And I suppose Gabriel, as somebody who has experienced cultures and probably can speak quite closely to what it is like entering different cultures, what's your experience on sort of starting within a workplace and having to currently, I would say, still having to mold to a culture or not? What is your take towards that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of this is going to be a slightly long-winded answer, but bear with me. It's going to
Go for it.
Essentially, so as I'm developing kind of like more about I don't know whether to my production company. Okay, those are the terminology that I'm going to use. I'm looking at the kind of power structures within workforces, because I am someone who I've done all sorts of work. I've done retail, I've done admin, and in every single one of these positions, I have had to adjust the way that I behave and act. I have had to, previously I was working like in an insurance admin place, and it was just a corporate office, and I was kind of told to like maybe keep it down a bit in regards to my queerness and transness. And it's crazy looking back now, because I was doing work experience when I was like 15, and telling a 15-year-old who has just come out as trans to maybe just just tell people your old name and just tell them your old pronouns and just don't really bother with it because it's inconvenient, kind of really outlined for me now what I'm kind of resisting with the approach that I have is resisting these power structures and having a lack of hierarchy within the places I say. I'm technically the director of this film that I'm doing, and this is a good example, I think, for the way that people in my generation see workplaces, is that I'm not getting crew on to work for me. We're working together in an equal playing field, and we have a system of accountability too. I really enjoyed, Asha, where you were talking about calling someone in rather than calling them out. It's an amazing practice that I've learned about quite recently, that I now employ in my sets is, and one of those, taking accountability is, do you feel safe enough to express yourself authentically within this system and not feel like you have to mask or that you have to hide parts of your identity like I've experienced previously? And I think that the culprit of it is that a lot of these business systems are based without an acknowledgement of systemic violence and how that influences how we create businesses. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It really did. And I think it really speaks to what we touched on within the session, which is that Gen Z particularly are kind of the most values and ethic driven generation we're seeing in the workplace to date. And I think that speaks really clearly, right? Is that you don't want to work somewhere where you can't be authentic, and the impact of you be having your authenticity almost, I don't want to say squashed, but that aspect means that you didn't stay there. And we see that time and time again, actually. And I think if we look at systemic things that we'd introduce, trans inclusion, trans 101, I mean, should be something that businesses see as compulsory, right? Is that fair?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people also have, trans inclusion is such an interesting terminology when you're looking at business specifically, because I think a lot of the time it's just, let's think about making sure that trans people feel included. Let's, once again, Asha, sorry, I feel like I'm talking about what you were saying all the time, but there's certain things that resonated with me really, really, like, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm thinking. But things like, oh, let's celebrate trans days instead of let's change something in terms of the processes that we have so that people can change their names at work easier, so that people can change their pronouns at work easier and don't have to do it themselves. I think that that's also a really important thing for me, is that I don't ever want somebody working with me to feel like they have to individually tell a group of people, these are my needs, these are my access needs, this is how I want you to refer to me. Is that it should, there's a level of advocacy that should be happening. Like, especially if you are in a senior position and you have the power to do something like that. I know that power is a strange thing that to look at hierarchically, but we don't have the time for that. But using your position to be an advocate and to try and make changes where you can, and not just have this kind of like queer washed, like, we have great trans inclusion, it's Trans Awareness Week, we're gonna paint the colors on our Instagram and not think about the systemic violence towards trans people, and it's I think that gets up what's going on in my brain.
No, absolutely it does. And thank you for that. It was actually a really insightful comment. And I think actually, we're talking around cultural changes. Something that Blossom certainly advocates for is sort of, mentoring, allyship programs, reverse mentoring, aspects like that. And I know that that's something that Stonewall talks quite often about. So I suppose, Kim, what role do mentorship, allyship, aspects like that play in ensuring the success, both, I suppose, of the well-being and also career success of LGBTQIA+ young individuals at the early stages of those careers?
So I think again, to mention what Asha said, I think it goes back to that visibility as well in two kinds of ways, because actually having the mentorship program in the first place does really set out stall in terms of the organization saying, from an advocacy point of view, this is what we believe in. We want to put business resources into this program because we want to develop our staff specifically. And I think also having senior leaders that do share the same kind of identities as you, it's really important to kind of learn from their career history and where they've come from, so you can kind of develop yourself in that way as well. Also, then you've also got the ear of someone senior as well. So if there are internal issues that are going on or changes that you think that you could feedback to make things more inclusive in general, it's always really useful to have that relationship across the hierarchies. I think what we also see as well is people from different organizations sharing mentorship programs as well. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be people from your organization, it can be other organizations, and also focusing more on those kind of hard skills that you were talking, hard and soft skills that you were talking about as well. So for example, public speaking, and I think because there's a lot of C-suite positions and senior leadership positions where unless you get the experience to develop those kind of skills, that you might always feel like a fish out of water with those type of things. So I think it's really about the organization saying, well, we understand that we want to develop people, we understand that there's underrepresentation, and we're kind of like, we want to do these things for our staff as well. And it will, like I said, it's part of allyship too. I did want to briefly just talk about network groups as well. I know that wasn't the question, but it was going through my mind while everyone was talking about culture. And I wouldn't be from Stonewall if I didn't mention the importance of employee network groups. That they're so important in terms of giving people a safe space once they join the organization. And I know for myself that whenever I join a new company, I always look for the employee network groups as well. It's really good in terms of senior leadership as well, getting a senior sponsor for the network group. It really provides that kind of mechanism for people to feed back as a collective and rather as an individual. And also when we were talking about intersectionality as well, those collective LGBTQ plus identities all have a different experience of the organization sometimes, and also the visibility of those identities aren't always clear as well. So getting people in that space to be able to discuss the specific considerations of these groups, it really helps like push that advocacy and that momentum forward from a values point of view as well. And the reason I also mentioned that because I know a lot of mentoring schemes for my client have come out of the kind of push from networks to say, actually, LGBTQ plus people are severely underrepresented within our organization and there needs to be some kind of systemic change. So even though it's not always great for the pressure to be on these groups, it is good to be able to have that kind of collective power. So network groups, massive fan.
Oh yeah, the good old network groups, ERGs. They are often the heartbeat of LGBT inclusion in workplaces. I see so often network chairs working so incredibly hard. Be that the right or wrong thing, actually, it's the reality, right? And that sort of movement within a workplace is really important, even if perhaps right now it isn't coming in as much of a systemic way as possible, I suppose. Now, I don't want to keep us, so I will just sort of wrap up with there's one question that's come in from somebody who's viewing, actually. And I'm going to have the first crack at answering this because I don't want to put anybody on the spot because it's, but by all means, if anyone would like to chip in afterwards, you're more than welcome to. So the question is around employee surveys and collecting employee data, right? But it's been pointed out that they have some relatively small departments in the organization. So it could mean that somebody is outed who isn't wanting to be outed by collecting that data. And they're asking if the panel has any sort of advice around that data collection and data processing. Now, from a personal perspective, the way that I would approach that is twofold. So if you can't, I would never present data that has less than 10 in the respondents in a particular group. So if we're talking about LGBT and there's less than 10 people who are LGBT, I would never openly share that data. It doesn't mean that somebody who understands and collects data in maybe a very senior position could be the one that sort of does that data analysis to actually understand that demographic. So I would more focus on the fact that if there is less than 10, highlighting that there is less than 10 and it would be an issue to out someone, which actually could point to a need to broaden that data monitoring set. Something that you could also consider doing is collecting departments separately. So some form services, some HR systems will allow you to collate somebody's demographics data, so whether they are LGBT, in one location, and in a separate location, maybe their satisfaction or their departments. So I would potentially look at splitting it out if possible, but I certainly would not report on the data if it is less than sort of 10. At best, I would maybe convert it to a percentage, as long as that percentage also doesn't leave you with a particularly obvious solution. But generally, if you're large enough to have a data protection team, they'll probably be able to give you some more specific guidance. I'm certainly not a data protection expert here, but I wonder if any of the panel want to disagree with me or share what they would do. There is no pressure to do that. You might not be able to unmute yourself, so you may have to wave to me. Kim.
We do give a lot of guidance to employers about these types of things, and I think your point is right, Oscar. The good practice would be to do it from a department point of view as well. But I did want to add is if that isn't possible for some reason, you can collect this data through diversity monitoring forms as well. It isn't on the button, the information isn't as immediate as a staff survey, but you can still encourage people to complete diversity monitoring forms as well, they're not necessarily published either. They're kept internal in the HR team. So that is something that you could do as well as a fix.
Yeah, absolutely. Did any of the other panelists want to add anything? There is no pressure, did you say? Asha.
Yeah, I would just add it is always a risk, and especially if it is a very small company and small teams, and the fact that somebody, as you've alluded to, Oscar, if they've mentioned this, it shows potentially that there's someone that doesn't want to be outed, and that there might be a bigger issue to address there in terms of the culture in the workplace. So as much as it's really good to have data so we can measure impact and progress, sometimes it's okay to say we don't know the figures, but we're going to assume that there will be people here that need LGBTQIA plus inclusion work done. And we will assume that people that are going to come into the company in the future will also benefit from that. So you could always focus on a survey that focuses in on the sentiment and the levels of inclusion and different barriers that people are facing there, which could be anonymous, it could be departmental if that's helpful. But even just doing that as a starting point will give you the kinds of insights that will allow you to strategically move in the right direction and hopefully show that you are willing to address these concerns. And then in the future, potentially, you could collect more quantifiable data about the identities you hold within the company. And there's always external partners that can do this for you and hold the data externally so that you don't have that risk of who in the company is going to know this about me? Is it going to affect my career progression? And is it going to affect attitudes towards me? That's always an option as well.
Thank you. So we're coming up to the end of the session, but what I just wanted to do is give each of the panelists just an opportunity to share where people can find you, whether you're on socials, if you have a website, or if not you specifically, then the organizations that you're representing. So we'll go round in the order of I introduced each of you. So Asha, I'll start with you.
Yes, so you can find more about us at indigoinclusion.com. We are on LinkedIn, but not very active, but occasionally you'll see some gems out there. Indigo Inclusion on LinkedIn, and you can follow me on Instagram at Asha Harkness. Again, not always very up to date, but yeah, I'd love you to give us a follow on LinkedIn's probably the best place. 2024 is going to be our year. We'll be active more, I promise.
Amazing. Fab. So Kim, how about Stonewall?
Yeah, so you can find us at www.stonewall.org.uk. And something that you might be interested in is that we've just published ACE in the UK report, which is our kind of policy recommendations to the government about how to integrate ACE identities into workplaces as well. It also covers health and other different areas of environments, but the workplace section is really interesting. So we're currently campaigning for the government to get asexuality included as a protected characteristic in the Equality Act. So if you're interested in anything like that, it's a really good and really interesting read.
Amazing. Thank you. And finally, Gabriel.
So you can find Bunny Teeth on Instagram at BunnyTeeth2, because they took down our first account because of systemic transphobia that we just talked about. And if you want to follow along and see how the short film gets on, it's just at Fold Short Film, and we just launched a GoFundMe and are looking for support in that kind of area. So if that's something that interests you, let me know. My email is also in the bio of at BunnyTeeth2. And you can access me through that, or you can speak with my assistant, whoever you prefer. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to once again just thank all three of you for coming up and talking for free. I know that you're all incredibly busy people, and that these sort of panels, they are so interesting, but they can take a real emotional mental toll sometimes, right? So just thank you so much for contributing that to us. It really does mean a lot that you believe in our mission to get more LGBT young people into the workplace. So it's really, really kind of you. Thank you. So I'm going to hide these panelists and just wrap it up for today. So thank you all for coming to watch us. It's got incredibly dark in my living room since we started today. I really hope that this has been an interesting workshop for those of you who have caught it. If you wanted to find out more about Blossom, our website is very simply www.blossom.lgbt. Like I say, you can partner with us on this scheme if you'd be interested in it, whether that's in partnering by having us deliver a mentoring in-house for you, or you bringing people to us as mentors. However it might be, there is so much scope for collaboration on this scheme. So really massive thank you. And I hope that I hear from some of you soon. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evenings. And then one final thank you that I totally should not have forgotten to Steph and Jem for their incredible hard work on this scheme so far. I mean, what they have put together in the first 2 months of being on board is going to absolutely change work for the young people that we support, and it's going to have such long-lasting impacts. So thank you, everybody. Goodbye.